Go. It's about to be a jovial 60 minutes, my dude. And you hear right now, what you gonna hear right now? Chase of all the places, and you hear right now, what you gonna hear right now? Chase of all the places, Been winning Dynasty, but does she like me? Feel like a plumber sleeping, now that's a pipe dream. For the right fee, I might be entitled to the title, be on top like the cherry of an ice cream. Sundays, that's the one day I can come play, never complain, cause I know the boys gon' drop a pod, prop up my squad so I can talk a lot. But here we go again, it's a new year, rookies flowing in, it's some new tears. Who here to dudes fear, bounce bells off of their chest like boutonnieres. It's a new era, happy hour, yeah. Let me ask you this, are you trying to get pics? Are you trying to get rich? Are you trying to get ships? Then you're trying to get this. And you hear right now, what you gonna hear right now? Chase of all the places, and you hear right now, what you gonna hear right now? Chase of all the places.
Welcome back to the Dynasty Happy Hour. I am your host, Doug Eddy, as you heard. I'm here with my co-host, Tyler Gunther, for the last time.
Last episode.
He says it's his last episode. We'll see. We don't know what the future holds. I have decided that I am going to have a look after the first of the year. I want to get through the holidays and then reassess everything after the first of the year, whether we continue on with me and a co-host, just me going somewhere else. I don't know what the future holds, but I just wanted to thank everyone for listening to us over the years. In case this is our last episode, I might do a solo next week. We'll see. But in case this will be my last episode with Tyler, that I do know. So thank you for all the years of support. I have met so many awesome people through hosting this podcast that I can call truly friends. I mean, Tyler, James, Damon, three of my best friends a guy could have, and meeting numerous other people that I've been in leagues with as we went to the Fantasy Expo a couple years ago, things like that. And just people knowing who I am, like, and never meeting me is just weird to me. Like, I do this podcast and like, oh, you're Doug Eddy, you're the fantasy father. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Yeah. So just blessed to be able to be a part of it as the longest standing host of the Dynasty Happy Hour. So take that, everybody else. Go me. As there were many before me, but none after me. So take that.
Yeah.
Tyler, say some words. This is going to be our last episode together. Bittersweet.
Yeah.
And a little sad.
It is. And it's been a crazy ride. 2016. Started the podcast, went back and forth with host, had Tim Keller on, who we had for a long time, and then he took a leave of absence, and then you stepped in. And I always had people ask me like, hey, why don't you host? It's your podcast and all this. And I go, well, you realize what you're good at and what you're not good at. And
Sure.
Being a host takes a lot of
Focus.
being able to, which I don't have. I mean, if Doug especially knows with a lot of different things, shiny things, loud noises, they get me. But Doug stepped in and it was like, it was tip of the mountain. You know, you peaked. We peaked early, and it's a good thing we hung on because Doug was easily the person that we needed to steer the ship. And I'm very thankful for you. Yeah, like you said, meeting friends along the way, meeting you in person, then you coming into Minnesota and kind of making that kind of a yearly tradition. Hopefully that stays true. And
I plan on it.
Yeah, and times when hopefully I can make it over to you. Meeting James, meeting a lot of people in the expo. Hopefully one of these years we'll be able to plan that. I mean, Doug and I, we talk every day, so there's a chance that we will be at the expo again. It's been fun. Like I I messaged the fantasy footballers the other day and just said, thank you for everything. I'm like, you guys, I still listen to you guys every day, and I still can't believe I'm like, God, I know these guys. And
I know him.
And they laughed about that, and like just meet Matthew Berry, that podcast. I remember doing the day podcast with him, and it was like,
yep,
this is crazy. Like, I listened to this guy,
and then he took our happy hour name. He was so impressed by us. He's like,
so
you know what? I'm
impressed.
going to leave ESPN and I'm going to start a podcast, and I'm going to call it the Fantasy Happy Hour.
It's
and,
true. That's what rumors have it, but we know the truth. And yeah, like even meeting like Marcus Grant, meeting a ton of people, like, and then starting the website, which was crazy. Like, I never thought I'd start a website, and Tim Keller also writers. Yeah, Tim Keller also on one day is like, hey, here you go. Here's the website. And I'm like, what? And he created it. And then having like a crazy team of writers and editor, and then starting the Open Bar podcast with J Mike and Gabe, which like finding J Mike was nuts. I was like, okay, one day
I miss the Open
guy.
Bar.
Yeah. And just every single writer that's been through and gone through, and people that message and be like, hey, you're like the OG, and I'm thinking like Dynasty Nerds is the OG, or like the old ESPN podcast that they had. I forgot what it's called, but it was with God, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank, but he's got red hair. I'm blanking.
Christopher Harris?
Yes, Christopher Harris. Like he had
he was also on the show.
Yeah, who was also on the show. And just like you said, like meeting people along the way, and it's been, if I could go back, I'd do it 100 times out of 100 again. Like at the time, it worked out perfect. I worked nights. We record on Sundays. The kids were young. It was easy. Record at 8, and it mixed well. And then I knew when I started, I'm like, this is going to be something I'm going to have to look at, because when the kids get older, it's going to get tougher.
Coming down the track.
Yeah, it's going to get tougher, and we're at that point where it's like it's tough. Everything's not aligning, and like you said, Doug, like this is goodbye. But I'm going to be switching the day shift next year, and who knows? Like we could come back in a couple years, and just see what happens. But I hope Doug carries on. I hope he finds another co-host. Hey, everybody, I gave him all the information, all my secrets, all the stuff. I slid it over to him, and
still didn't give me the tater tot hot dish recipe, but whatever.
You got to come up to Minnesota to get that.
Next time, I hope to come up there in the spring or the summer. So
that'll be fun, as it always is. The White Claws will come out, but
still have some of those left. I hope.
I probably. 80. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that has listened throughout the years and stuck with us. I know, like, we started, there's like 6 Dynasty podcasts, and now there's hundreds and hundreds.
Literally.
And honestly, they're good. Like, there's a lot of information out there, and that's the thing. Like, whoever still listens to us from day one, you latched on and you like our information. You've trusted our information. Hey, we've gotten a lot of things right. We've gotten some things wrong.
Sure.
But I like to think we've gotten a lot right. Like I was thinking the other day, I'm like, man, like even the calls this year, like you had Bowers and I had Jalen McMillan, who I stuck to and I held on to. And yeah, there's the misses like Roman Wilson, who I still have faith in, but like I will still love the process. I'm still in all these leagues. I don't think I'm dropping any leagues this year.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, like thank you everybody for listening. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. What, like 8 years? And it's crazy.
That's a long time. Yeah.
And a lot of the Dynasty podcasts that started with me, like they still go on, like Nerds and all that. But then you got like Dynasty Dummies who do 1 or 2 podcasts a year during the draft. And I will always be like, okay, I need to listen to these guys, Zach and J Mike, who do the podcast. And like there's a lot of good information out there. Keep looking, and you never know when we might pop up again.
That is very, very true. I am feeling fortunate, not only because, obviously being able to host this podcast for as long as I have. And, like I said, we'll see what the future holds. But I feel fortunate. And, when you said that, like, the results are good, looking just as this year as like a microcosm, So I'm in almost all Dynasty leagues. Out of 12 out of my 13 leagues, and I'm in Scott Fishbowl, which I got eliminated this week. I finished 471st. I'm okay with that. Out of 4,500-ish teams, like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
My team just had a bad week, and it is what it is. But I'm happy to participate in that every single year. It's one of the biggest things I look forward to is getting that Scott Fishbowl invite and then drafting in Boston. So I love that. It was a lot of fun this year. And then I play in one redraft league, which is from my brother-in-law, and everything else is Dynasty. So in those 12 Dynasty leagues, I have officially made the final 4 teams in all 12, which to me is wild. And part of the reason why it's wild is that there are multiple leagues where I've taken over a team or I've joined a manager that needed help and have been able to turn it around within a couple, 2-3 years time, which to me is, it's one thing to take over a stacked team and just win with it. Like that's not a lot of fun to me. But one of the reasons I really enjoy playing Dynasty is taking over that team where you're like, all right, there's not a lot here. I know it's going to be a little bit of, it's going to take some time, 2-3 years, through the process of making picks and trades and things like that, picking up free agents that end up hitting, like, and then seeing all those teams be successful is crazy. So it's just one of those things that if you play Dynasty, if you've listened to us over the years, you kind of get the idea of how we play. And, I feel like we've been right more often than not, even though we've had total swing and misses like Leonte Carew, like back in the day. Guys like that is the one that always sticks out to me because I drafted him at like at the end of the first round.
Dante Moncrief.
Yeah, the hill that we were forever die on. We'll hold hands on that hill. We'll be
biggest hill.
Yes, large. So it's one of those things is like this year, like it was kind of eye-opening. I'm like, oh, I got a pretty good chance to, make the playoffs in most of my leagues. And then having buys or winning last week, I was just like, wow, I literally made the Final Four in all 12 of my Dynasty leagues. That's wild to me. And then hopefully I'll win this week and move on to the finals. And, winning this week is going to be interesting because we had probably one of the heavier injury weeks that we've had in the league in the last at least couple of months. Like it's been some small injuries here and there, nothing super duper crazy that's going to affect the way your league is. But this week, I mean, we've got David Montgomery, who's out for the year with a knee injury. The running back position, Saquon Barkley got banged up and didn't play all the snaps. So he let people down in the first round last week. Kenneth Gainwell got some more work there. Nick Chubb breaks his foot. So it opens the door for a guy like Jerome Ford. So if he's been sitting on your roster all season long, you haven't started him once. And now you're like, oh, he plays Cincinnati. He's going to get the workload. I'm going to start Jerome Ford. That's the cool thing about Dynasty is that you have guys on your roster, and then all of a sudden they can be thrust into a starting role and help contribute to you winning or contribute to you losing. Either way, it's a double-edged sword. But so the other injuries that we had, obviously the big one from the quarterback standpoint was Patrick Mahomes getting banged up with a high ankle sprain. No reports on him. He fully practiced, but they're doing like a super lightweight walkthrough practice this week because they play 3 games in 11 days. I was talking to Tyler about this last night that I would not be surprised if Patrick Mahomes doesn't play this week. They have a 2-game lead for home game advantage or home field advantage. There's no reason to put Patrick Mahomes out there like fresh off an injury. I think it would be stupid because if you risk him and he hurts himself worse, like he could miss a playoff game. Like that would just be asinine to me. So I think they'll do the right thing and they will rest Mahomes this coming week. But we'll know more as the week goes on. Another running back that got hurt was Alvin Kamara. He had that one-handed beautiful touchdown catch from Cedric Wilson and scored. And then after that, he went out. He has an adductor, not an abductor. It's an adductor injury. You ever sit at the gym and you get that machine where you do your legs for the adductors? So he's got some sort of like groin inner thigh issue. That's a tricky one because he plays on Monday night and that's the last game of the week. And if you don't have Kendre Miller, hopefully you have a pivot ready, or at least they come out with injury information on like Saturday or Sunday morning to say, hey, Alvin Kamara is not going to play. He's questionable. Because then like in the 3 leagues that I have Alvin Kamara, I have Kendre Miller in 2 of them. But in the third one, I don't even think I have anyone else in that game that I could start. So that could be a problem. So big decisions to be made in a big week as you're trying to get into the final. Josh Allen had an X-ray following their win over Detroit. He said he took a funky fall. Won't you take me to funky fall? but then everything checked out fine, so he'll probably be okay. Jaleel McLaughlin did not return against the Colts. That Broncos running backfield is a hot mess. Alec Pierce had a concussion. You're not starting him anyway because Anthony Richardson's not good. If you started Jalen Waddle on his nice heater that he's had 7 catches or more in the last 2 games. And then he hurt his knee against the Texans, and he did not return. So he got you an absolute bagel in the playoffs. Luckily for me, crazy scenario, I started Jalen Waddle, and in my Superflex spot, because I don't have a second quarterback, I don't want to talk about it, I started Devon Vele. He also had a bagel, but I still won. Thank you, Josh Allen. Thank you, Brian Thomas Jr. I heart you. Let's see what else we had. We had some other injuries. Jalen Hurts had a broken finger. They were making a big deal out of it. Whatever. Will Levis was benched in the third quarter versus the Bengals, and they've already announced that Mason Rudolph is going to start. I think the Will Levis experiment might be over in Tennessee. They've given him multiple chances. This reminds me of like Mac Jones when they benched him a couple of times, and then he was kind of out the door. So we'll see what happens with Levis. But the Titans aren't very good, although we did see some nice Chigga usage finally. Yeah, he's one of your best players on offense, in my opinion. Just use him, you idiots. But anywho. And then the Commanders tight end, Zach Ertz, had a concussion, and he was ruled out against the Saints. So if you need tight end help, Ben Sinnott is probably sitting on your taxi squad. I don't know what the target share is going to look like or anything like that, but he did run the most routes for the Commanders at the tight end position once Ertz exited the game. Ertz exit, double E reference. You don't see those very often or hear them even. I think that was pretty much it for the injuries that I'm seeing here. Oh, Trey Benson did also bundle his ankle, and then he was ruled out against the Patriots. Let's be honest, the Cardinals had that game in hand without too much of an issue whatsoever. I don't know where Tyler went. He was like, you know what? It's my last episode. Technical difficulties, which has been our theme for this year. We've had quite a few. I know he's got one of his kiddos home today too, taking a sip. And Tyler's back.
All
right.
Yeah, my mic is deciding on the last episode to mess around with me.
I told him, I said to our lovely listeners that I said technical difficulties was one of our themes for the year, and that it's your last episode, so it wouldn't be right without some technical difficulties.
That's true. So
I went over all the injuries. I don't know if you had any thoughts, but I pretty much covered all the injuries from this past week, and I was just ready to roll into observations and whatnot and chop it up against.
I mean, the Mahomes one, like you were talking about before my computer decided to crash out. Looks like he's going to play, and that's just Mahomes.
Dumb.
It is dumb, but so coming from somebody who actually does, I actually just recently got a ankle sprain, very similar, and a broken toe, and so for the first week it sucked, but with a wrap, I actually went back and played again. I don't know if it was a low ankle sprain, but I definitely did something to my ligaments in my foot too. But yeah, it's definitely a pain tolerance thing, and they are going to wrap the crap out of that thing. And the best, because I was worried, I'm like, okay, we all seen this with Mahomes in the playoffs. He had an ankle injury, and he still dominated with it and won the Super Bowl. And he said it's not as bad as that one. So that's a positive, right?
Sure.
But yeah, if you have Mahomes in the playoffs, I would maybe look elsewhere and maybe see what else he got. But if you have to start him, I mean, it's Mahomes. He could just go ham. And this is,
and they're going to get Hollywood Brown back.
Yeah, it's true. And Worthy's definitely getting some different play options. We've seen him run the ball more.
Hopkins started off hot for them, and he's been dust ever since.
Yeah.
Same with Kelsey.
Have we brought up the Atlanta Falcons news?
I have not. I was waiting for you to come back because that is your team.
Yeah. Michael Penix, he's starting. They are benching Kirk Cousins, which should happen. He looks terrible. He has no zip. He can't.
One touchdown in 5 games.
Yeah, we talked about this in length last episode, but Penix is coming in, and it's against the Giants, and it's home. This, to me, screams, if you've got the gumption, if you got the cojones to start Penix, I think it's a good idea, because if there's one thing the Giants can do, it's stop the run. If there's one thing they can't do, it is stop the pass.
They are a funnel.
Especially two receivers. They stop the tight ends, but it's not hard to stop Kyle Pitts. I mean, maybe this will make Kyle Pitts run a route better or play harder. But Penix is in, and I think it's good news for Mooney. I think it's good news for London. It's good news for Bijan coming out of the backfield. It's just good news in general. Like
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
So the only league I have Penix in is a super flex league, and my current starters are Tua and Jordan Love. Would you? Now I'm facing the number 1 team. He's got a pretty stacked lineup. Projections are he's projected to win, but not by a lot, like under 10 points. I'm a guy that sometimes does have. Oh, he can't hear me. So Tom sometimes has the onions. Just shake your head, yes or no. Would you start Michael Penix over Jordan Love? Risk it all for the biscuit, right? As they say.
That's the thing with Penix is like it is definitely a big ball move per se, and I've done that with Dalton. Like when Andy Dalton went off week 16, back when we only had, week 16 was a championship. I started Dalton and I won. Like I won the title with Dalton, and those are the type of moves that you can make. But sitting Jordan Love, especially when the Packers need everything to stay in the playoff hunt because the NFC North is so crazy. I think that you ride the Jordan Love horse because I think they are going to. I just think they're going to show out the rest of the year, and Jordan Love has proven he can
win too. So
yeah, it's true. And I mean, yeah, it's a tough call. It's definitely, like you said, it's a ballsy move.
Yeah, he's the best team. He's got a good roster, so we'll see what happens. We'll see. I think what I'll do is if Kamara is out and I have to put Kendre Miller in, then maybe I'll pivot and look for a ceiling play and just go with Penix and YOLO.
It'll be fun. I mean, if he goes off and scores 3 touchdowns, which would be amazing, you're going to look like a genius. And then if
he duds, then I'll be like, whatever.
Yeah, if he duds, you can just be like, oh, I had to take the chance. I had to.
Yeah, so absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about this week 15 landscape. I think it's interesting looking at the running back points for the year. It's like a 5-way logjam for like the number 2 guy now because you got Alvin Kamara is officially the number 2, which is wild to me because it doesn't feel like he had that explosive game early in the season. He's just been super consistent all year long. But it seems like all in all, like it's been kind of a down couple months for him, but he's been plugging along and now he's the number 2 on the season. You got Jahmyr Gibbs in there, Derrick Henry's in there. So it's getting to be clogged. Saquon's still on top, obviously, but the running back position, we've talked about it before, has just been, if you went running back heavy, those rosters are looking really good. And a couple of my dynasty teams, we are running back heavy, and it has paid off largely because the wide receiver position has been so down. I mean, we have 2 rookie wide receivers in the top 10 still. You have Brian Thomas, who's up to wide receiver 7, and then Malik Neighbors is at wide receiver 10, which normally don't see that in the rookie seasons because usually the wide receiver position is scoring more. I mean, Jamar Chase has been amazing this year, but outside of him, Jefferson's been consistent, kind of like Kamara. Jefferson, 2 weeks ago had the big game, but that was his first time scoring a touchdown in 6 weeks? Yeah. And then he scored this past week, so he's starting to heat up a little bit, but just a weird year. And then tight ends started off kind of hot. Oh no, they started off slow this year.
Yeah, very slow.
They picked it up. You got Sam Laporta had his best game of the season so far with David Montgomery out. I think they may use Sam Laporta more as he's getting healthier as the season winds down. So you can start Sam Laporta, I think, with confidence, especially this week against the Bears. But Trey McBride has over 100, or what is that? Over 100 receptions and 0 touchdowns. He just broke Deontay Johnson's record for most catches without a touchdown. Wild. I'm scared to hell. I have him and Bowers in a league. I keep talking myself into keeping McBride into my flex that I can flex a tight end because I'm just worried that tight end regression touchdown is going to hit and he's going to have like a 2 or 3 touchdown game.
I mean, Kyler came out today saying that it is an emphasis to get him a touchdown. Like
He's got
Kyler,
a ton of red zone targets. He's got 18. I think Travis Kelce leads tight ends with 22.
Yeah, but the thing is when Kyler think it's red zone, he think it's like a Call of Duty match.
Warzone? He thinks it's Warzone.
Yeah, he's like, oh, all right, here we go. Yeah, and going back to the Brian Thomas and the receivers, let's kind of hit on that because I was listening to a podcast the other day and they're talking about Marv, Neighbors, Brian Thomas, and everybody's putting Brian Thomas at wide receiver 1, like ranking for this class. And the FF Dynasty, who are amazing people like Casey and I forgot who else they have, but they're an awesome podcast. Like since we're leaving, if you need a podcast, go listen to them because they're great. He went on a soapbox and was like, I'm keeping Marv at 1. He's like, I'm not going off of my evaluation thinking he's an elite person just because of what I've seen so far. And he goes, this guy was one of the top prospects coming out that he's ever seen. And yet, because he's had an off season compared to Brian Thomas and all that, he's not going to be as reactionary as everybody else. And
I think that's fair.
Everybody's putting Marv like at 15 now after putting him at like wide receiver 4, just because he's not connecting with Kyler. People are cheering to the rooftops because they were correct on Marv being not a great separator. But I mean, he is like, he's separating. He's shown he is. It's just him and Kyler are off. Kyler's not hitting him on the back shoulder throws. You can see it on the field. Like they're just off. That offense is off unless it's James Conner or Trey McBride.
Yeah.
What do you feel about these receivers? Because Marv was the dude. He was the can't miss guy, and now everybody's panicking, and I think he's going to be a massive, massive buy. Same with like Rome Odunze, who everybody's dropping. And if there's another person who's getting wide open and is showing everything on the field,
Caleb's deep ball percentage is atrocious.
Caleb looks off as well.
He shows flat. The thing about Caleb is, we've seen it now in 3 of the last handful of years. So quarterback gets drafted 101. Everyone excited. Generational Trevor Lawrence struggles like holy hell in his rookie season. And everyone's like, I drew the comparisons of like Peyton Manning in his rookie season. He stunk. He was so bad. People forget that. Then Bryce Young comes along, goes 101. Not a generational prospect. Good quarterback class, or at least we thought. And, Bryce Young struggles out the gate and everyone's like, he's a bust. He's a bust. Caleb comes out. When you look at like the Bears, they should have a few more wins, based on some of the things that have happened to them. Caleb's had some great games. He hasn't thrown an interception. He hasn't been turning the ball over.
16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
Right. He's been able to scramble. He needs to work on getting the ball out of his hands quicker.
Yeah.
And processing faster. It's the NFL. It's not college. You see what he can do in the pocket. He can move around. You've seen the arm talent. I think that there was too much pressure, as every 101 that gets picked at the quarterback position. There's always a ton of pressure. People were like, the Bears are going to the Super Bowl because they had more. They drafted Dunze. They trade for Keenan Allen. They get DeAndre Swift. Everyone's got a sweatpant boner for the Bears, and the expectations were sky high. And yet every other team in the division is going to be in the playoffs. So I don't think, they had the whole Eberflus thing. Like they're a hot mess. So I will buy into Caleb still because I think that the skills are there. He needs to slow down. I think a good offseason working with his team will be good for Caleb. We've seen the ceiling. I think he's shown a higher ceiling in his rookie year than Trevor Lawrence or Bryce Young ever did.
Yeah.
When you look at some of the games that he had, he's had 4 touchdown games.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence and Bryce Young rookie year, they were the worst.
Atrocious.
Yeah. It was awful. Like when Trevor Lawrence had it, you're like, there's no way anybody. And then all of a sudden Bryce Young steps in and it's like, okay, that's bad. Caleb has definitely shown flashes, like 4 traits. I know Jason Moore on the Footballers podcast said, like, when you watch Bryce Young last year, he showed nothing of like, that is a franchise quarterback. What he's shown this year, that there is something
some of
to
his
him.
throws have been beautiful.
Yeah, and Caleb this year, he actually has shown like, okay, that's an elite arm talent. That's a guy that can escape the pocket. And I think he's got a little more Carson Wentz in him than people think. Carson Wentz's issue was, I'm going to hang on to the ball for like 5 damn seconds, escape the pocket, and then try to make this crazy, crazy throw. And I'm either going to overthrow, throw a pick, or there's going to be one play where it's like, damn, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where he's at right now in his career. And Carson Wentz, after it took him a little bit to kind of be like, okay, hone that in. But I mean, it still comes out every now and then. But the thing with Carson Wentz is he was a great fantasy option. You know, Carson Wentz would have the game with like 3 picks, but he'd also have a game with like 4 touchdowns, 80 rushing yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
We saw Caleb when the schedule was a little bit softer. Caleb was balling out, right? And then the schedule, if you look at their schedule over the last 6 weeks, they've had a lot of tough opponents. It's not easy. So yeah, I'm still in on Caleb, but you know, the going back to the receivers, I would still rank them. We talked about it pre-draft that I had Neighbors and Marv. Like Neighbors has the ceiling, Marv has the floor, but they're close. After the season's done, I'd probably rank it Neighbors, Marv, and then Brian Thomas Jr. But Brian Thomas Jr. has closed the gap on Marv, I think. You know, based on he's going to go over 1,000 yards. He could get 10 touchdowns, and if he does that, he's going to be in pretty rare company with some pretty elite names. So, you know, I could see in the off season that, like, even right now, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is probably ADP is higher than Marv's. Right?
Oh, it is.
Because it's all recency bias. This is what Dynasty is like, you know, and you said last week that like the values just change. They change so wildly from week to week that people forget, like they watching tape on this player. They only take what they see now and they react to that. You can't necessarily do that because there's a lot of things that factor in. So I think that, you know, the biggest thing with Dynasty that you can take advantage of is people overreacting to one big game. Like, oh, we love Brian Thomas. Like he was the smash value late in the first. If you were able to get him at 110, 111, congrats. Like I was able to get him in one league at 111 and he scored 32.5 points last week and helped advance me in the playoffs. It was awesome. Very thankful. But you know, it's stuff like that. If you can take advantage of these wild swings and when the chips are down on a player who's had a couple rough weeks, like that's when you want to kind of strike. If it's a player that you believe in based on your assessment, not based on what you saw in front of you that particular week, because things can change. Players can have awesome games and then they can be shit for 3 weeks. It happens. So, you know, that's part of, especially when you talk about rebuilding a squad and going from like, you know, not having a lot of pieces to acquiring pieces. This is the way that you slowly do that over time to get to yourself to a point where you can make the playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like right now is the time, like you could get maybe a second with Marv to go get, you know, to get Brian Thomas. Like say you're a competing team, you have Brian Thomas, you could give Brian Thomas for Marv and maybe even an early second. And I think that's where the value's at right now, which is crazy to think about because Marv was already top 5 in Dynasty rankings for receivers. And here we are.
Really before he was even drafted.
Yeah. And like you said, if you were able to get him, you know, at 110, 111, congrats, because I think Brian Thomas will be a low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 for his career. It just all depends on what Jacksonville turns into. Like, what if they do get a Ben Johnson? Like, his ceiling could be higher. But then again, they don't have Christian Kirk. They don't have Evan Ingram. That offense could change. They could be a whole entire running team like Ben Johnson has made the Lions. And things could definitely change.
I mean, Bigsby and Etienne could be your Dollar Tree, Montgomery and Gibbs.
100%. And Trevor Lawrence is coming back. So, like, there's a lot of positives about Jacksonville, I think. And looking at that offense, especially with Strange coming into play, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Jacksonville does this offseason.
Same. What else you got from this week, Tyler?
To be honest with you, I didn't really watch too much football. I think I watched only a little bit of the Monday night games. I didn't watch any football Sunday.
They weren't great.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really miss much, but I I've been looking at values of players. Like, would you put Bucky Irving in the top 12 RBs for Dynasty? I mean, there's a lot of websites have him at RB8, RB9.
See, that's a recency. I mean, I think he's good. Do I think that he's? I mean,
he's playing with the Shaquille O'Neal icy hot back patch every single game.
I know. He had that long run last week. He ends up going over 100 yards again. I think he's just a really good player. I don't know if I'm ready to put him in the top 10, top 12. I think there's other guys that I would have over him right now. But, I mean, if he finishes the season strong in this next few weeks and helps bring people championships, his stock is only going to go up.
Yeah.
And, it's another guy. Congrats. If you drafted him at the end of round 3, early round 4, like, awesome. Like, you did well. Like, good job.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd crown him yet. Especially with this, because it's really tough, right? So you're going to have more running backs be free agents. Not as many as last year, mind you. But we've got we've got this draft class coming in that a lot of people, it could be 12, 13 guys deep. We don't know. My take is that because it's so deep, guys are going to go later in the draft than we want them to. And I'm looking forward to the discount because they're going to be like, oh, this guy was a second round grade, but he didn't go until the 4th. And people will dismiss him for a receiver that was taken
Henderson.
Second. You think he's going to go that late?
I think he's going to be a 3rd round pick, and people are going to start sleeping on him, even though he's a highly touted prospect. I love his style of play. I think he fits in a lot of offenses like Miami, San Francisco. He'd be a great replacement for McCaffrey. It's just his speed and his explosiveness. I think he's going to be overshadowed by a lot of like Judkins, his running mate. I think he's going to get overshadowed a lot by these running backs. And the funny thing is, we're talking about these running backs. I listened to Todd McShay's podcast. He's got a new one because he left ESPN, and I really enjoyed it because he's not kind of on the ESPN monitor. He's on his own, so he's just letting it loose. And he was talking. He's like, the quarterbacks suck. Shooter Sanders.
Drew Lamar just went back to school too.
Yep. Tear down. And then it's Cam Ward. Then it's like nobody. And
yours might transfer out.
And he was talking about receivers even. Like Luther Burden he's just a chess piece. He's not an alpha. Tech from Arizona is a good receiver, but he's a poor man's Drake London. Like that's what he compared him to.
Fair.
And he goes, this running back class, he said, a lot of people said it's the best running back class in a decade, but there's so many that teams can literally just pick. He's like, there's literally people can just pick and choose their style, like what flavor. He goes, Ashton Genty is going to be a top 15 NFL pick. That's what he thinks. And he goes, he'll go early, but then after that, it's pick your poison. Like, what do you need? What do you need? Speed? Do you need power? Do you need vision? And he goes, this class has everything. So it's more just what your team needs, which could push running backs down. It'll be definitely a 2nd and 3rd round NFL pick that a lot of these running backs will go. But once one goes, I feel like a lot are going to go. So it's going to be like, who's going to make the first move?
Kind of like receiver this year. Like it was like once they started to go, then the 2nd round, like the Patriots picked Polk because they wanted to trade in and get Leggett at the end of the 1st. And then they took Polk kind of like reactionary because McConkey went off the board. And then they were like, we'll take Polk. And obviously we'll see how that ends up turning out in his career. But this is what'll happen. And I've said it before. The running backs will get drafted later than everyone thinks. They'll slide in the rookie drafts because there's so many of them. And you'll be able to use 3rd round picks on really good prospects and build your running back room on your taxi squad and then enjoy it because here's the thing. At running back, injuries happen arguably more than any other position. And even look at it now. Like you've got guys like Craig Reynolds that are fantasy relevant with David Montgomery out. You've got Jerome Ford, who's taken advantage of Nick Chubb being out for the season. And you name it. Garendo's like the running back 4 or 5 on the Niners. Like this happens every year. So if you just draft running backs that you like in those rounds, chances are like you may be able to get some fantasy usage out of them and maybe they become the next guy. Maybe they become a Bucky Irvin or a Tyrone Tracy or a Garendo that was a 4th or 5th round rookie pick that now you're starting here in the playoffs. So that's what I think is going to happen with running back.
Another funny thought I thought of was, okay, Denver drafted Bo Nix in the first round. In the fourth round, early fourth, they decided to go Troy Franklin because Bo Nix was like, hey, this dude's really good. Why didn't Bo Nix be like, Bucky Irving could be our Alvin Kamara? Because he played with Bucky. He was a receiving threat. Denver was right there.
Did they take Estime over Irving?
Estime, I think, was a 5th round pick.
Okay,
so he was
Irving
after.
Before.
So I'm guessing like maybe they're like, okay, we'll take Irving in the 5th, but Irving was an early 5th, I'm pretty sure, or comp 4th. So for me, maybe they got jumped a little earlier than they wished, but that would have been a perfect fit for what Denver runs. Because
or maybe they were like, oh, we have Jaleel McLaughlin and we like him. They have a similar style.
I mean, Sean Payton loves McLaughlin.
Right.
Her songs are great. They played in locker room.
The Eyes of an Angel. Yeah, I mean, you could be onto something. I'm looking forward to see. That's one of the teams that I'm looking forward to. You know, Bo Nix has had a really good rookie season with not a lot outside of Cortland Sutton. That the backfield has been a mess. They don't have anything at tight end. I mean, they're rolling out Adam Troutman and Nate Adkins, guys. Like I've heard of Troutman, obviously, but Adkins diet? No, I don't know anything about that. And then, you know, they've got like this hodgepodge of receivers. Valet he's been like I think he's got the 5th most receptions from rookies this year. So pretty solid season in his rookie year. They draft Franklin. They got Mims, who they've used here and there. So I'd be interesting to see what Denver does to build around Bo Nix, because they've got a pretty good line. Their defense is very good.
Yeah. Bonito has stepped up and just been a dominant force since they traded.
Yeah, Bonito's a beast.
Who'd they
Brown
trade? Yeah, and once they traded him to open up for Bonito, who was a great linebacker in, I think, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. So, yeah, Denver's going to be, there's a lot of teams that are going to be interesting. Atlanta doesn't need to draft offense this year, so they can finally hit the defense. That'll be fun. Patriots have the most cap. It'll be fun to see what they do and what they do at receiver. Yeah, it's definitely going to be
I think DK Metcalf's on the move this offseason.
Yep. Me too. And that's, I thank God you brought that up, because the FF Dynasty podcast, they're talking about, you know, Marv and all that, and how values are just shit, and how people switch so much. And they brought up JSN, and he's like, you couldn't even get a fucking second for JSN 8 weeks ago, and now he's a wide receiver, you know,
he's
top 10 receiver.
6 on the season, I believe.
Yeah, and just out of nowhere, and people were just freaking out about JSN.
It's a weird wide receiver year. This is why this is happening with the points. Like, he went out of nowhere to be wide receiver 6 because the wide receiver position is so down bad this year that like that allows those types of things to happen.
But I mean, he is dominating. He is playing very well.
I'm not taking anything away against him. I'm just saying he's been more noticeable because he's a top 10 receiver.
Yeah, and let's just pray Geno's healthy, because Sam Howell, to give him credit, Howell looked like he came in cold and was like, oh shit, I got to play.
You've seen Sam Howell slinging around the yard. I mean, there was this time last year, week 14 or 13, he was the NFL's leading passer when it comes to yards.
Yeah.
So
you can definitely sling it. He went like 5 for 21 last week, and I think it was legit. It was legit game plan. I'm pretty sure it was game plan. Just like they didn't expect him to come in. He went in and they panicked. It was like full panic. Like, oh damn, what do we do? So give him a little bit. But anything else you want to hit on?
Yeah, I think DK Metcalf, if the Patriots are unable to sign T. Higgins, now T. Higgins just left his agent. Now he has the same agent as Jamar Chase.
He's balling.
There's been some smoke around, you know, the Burrow saying that he'll restructure to try to get T back. So there's been a lot of chatter. Now, whether it happens or not, who knows? But if the Bengals are able to bring T. Higgins back, there's no other wide receiver free agent that is as impactful as T. Higgins. So
Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, sure. You know, the Patriots are going to kind of be up Schitt's Creek and then have to rely on the draft, but they should go after a guy like DK Metcalf.
100%.
Compare with Drake May. Take on the salary. Compared to other receivers, he's making a good amount, but he's not like $30 million a year.
He's at 18 next year.
And I'm fine
if
with
he keeps his contract. Yeah.
Like, bring him in, make him your alpha receiver. And then obviously they probably want to draft someone too. You know, Polk looks like he could be a bust. Time will tell. But, you know, you've got Pop Douglas. The tight ends there. Hunter Henry, draft a tight end. This is a good tight end class. Like, or maybe give Jaheim Bell a shot. Like, just saying. But Austin Hooper's got like 32 receptions and like 5 touchdowns, and he's Austin freaking Hooper. Like he's
150 yards.
Yeah, he's hashtag not great. So the Patriots should go all in after a guy like DK Metcalf, or sniff around on many other receivers in the league that could be on the move, because that's what they need to do. This team is so bad. I'm not going to get on a soapbox about it, but as you know, the Pats are not good. What did I want to talk about? I did talk a little bit about Will Levis losing his job. I think he's donezo. Like,
he'll
be back there. It's just whatever.
Jameis lost his job.
Yeah, it's officially DTR season. So Jameis was fun while it lasted, as much as Jameis Winston in his career.
Yeah, he revived Jerry Jeudy, so I'm worried about Jeudy with DTR.
Yeah, one of my friends asked me a question about, he's like, pick 3. It was like Cooper Kupp, 2 other receivers, and Jeudy. And I said, I don't think you can trust Jeudy with DTR out there. Like, Winston was the best thing for him.
I think Kupp. I don't know what it is. Even though he goosed, I think he's going to have a good week this week.
Yeah, I think he'll bounce back. I wouldn't be worried. And if you survived with Kupp as a bagel, like Damon and I did, then yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting to see Aaron Rodgers now has had 2 quarterback 1 weeks in a row. His Netflix special just came out. Do you think he's finally turning it around because he's auditioning for teams?
I don't know.
He loves the attention.
He loves attention. The Netflix special came out, and he's like, well, if I play well as well, people will talk about me more. And his ego's just getting fed, and he loves it. Yeah, I hate that he's playing well, because it's like, maybe he gets a second chance somewhere. Maybe the Jets run it back.
At least his arm didn't deteriorate with the Achilles injury like it did with Kirk Cousins.
Oh, Kirk Cousins, the issue was his arm wasn't great to start. He could make throws, but he couldn't throw it like Rodgers.
Into it to throw it.
Yeah,
Rodgers
and now
like flick that we talk about, just boop.
Yeah, now Cousins got to throw every ounce of power into a fucking 20-yard in route.
Yeah, it's bad. The Jets have a good schedule, and Rodgers. I mean, if you start Rodgers this week, streaming him, or he's your 3rd quarterback, not a terrible matchup. Devontae Adams cooked. He helped us win a matchup last week. Garrett Wilson had a nice game.
He was pissed. Garrett Wilson is pissed. If they showed him on the sideline, he legit went up to Rodgers and said, "Throw me the fucking ball." And
as he should. Garrett Wilson's a guy that the Patriots, if there was an interdivision trade, if the Jets want to blow things up, I would trade the Patriots' 2nd round pick, which will be like the 203 or 204.
Trade your first.
Well, no, they're going to have a top 5 pick, but I would trade that 2nd rounder and then extend Wilson and just roll with that. Like, he would be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, the Jets would get interest from a lot of teams for that, but
sure.
If we're looking at receivers, Brandon Ayuk, I think, was, getting
They were trying to get him on a draft day trade last year, but the Niners, their asking price was way too high. And
they actually had a trade for Ayuk, but Ayuk declined it because he didn't want to go to the Patriots. Patriots actually offered him, what was it, 32?
They offered
32 mil a year. And I bet Ayuk is kicking himself, because I get he got hurt, but Ayuk playing with Drake May, I bet he looked at Drake May and was like,
now that he knows what Drake May is, he's probably like, oh, I could make some magic with this kid.
Yeah. So that would have been fun.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda. What else? Oh, Malik Washington flashing this week. I know that was a guy that I liked.
Yeah, me too.
Like 5th round or UDFA. I liked his college profile a lot. Now, the Dolphins released Odell Beckham Jr. Bye-bye. You haven't been significant. You want to help them win a Super Bowl a few years ago. It is what it is. Like, you talk about being the number 1 dynasty pick, right? And then injuries and this and that. He went to the Browns and then just absolutely dudded with Baker. And he was never the same. He was never really fantasy relevant again after that. He finished with the Rams. He got the Super Bowl, which was great. He played well for them. Just too many injuries. I think I can't imagine anyone picks him up. I think
he's toast.
But this has opened up Malik Washington. Now, Jalen Waddle, I talked about it earlier, had a bagel this week. And Malik Washington, I've always liked his profile, as a kind of a slot guy that you can move around. So
sick boy.
If Waddle doesn't play this week, like, Malik Washington can make some noise. He might be the kind of guy that if you have injuries and you have him on your taxi squad, you promote him and start him in YOLO. So yeah, just wanted to point him out as a player that popped for me and looked really good. He had 5 receptions for 52. I think he was 2nd on the team in targets. So some interesting things there. Oh, what else? Bills-Lions game was fun. Everyone scored, which was great. Jared Goff, like an all-timer game, almost 500 yards and 5 touchdowns in a losing effort. Because Josh Allen
second time this year he threw 5 touchdowns on a loss.
Yeah, but he threw 5 interceptions in a win. I think he's the only player to ever do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Let's talk about the Lions for a second, because I want to talk about Jameson Williams and how I started buying him like week 4 or 5.
Yeah, early in the season you were buying him.
I don't think he's going to be the 12th overall pick, crazy productive, but I think he's going to have that. He'll get you 3 for 53.
I think he's a wide receiver 3 that can give you wide receiver 1 weeks a couple times a year.
Yep. And I think he's going to be more dependable than we think.
Sean Jackson.
Yeah.
That type of player.
Yeah, I could see that.
This year is Rashid Shaheed early in the season.
Yeah. Who I think Rashid Shaheed, if depending on what New Orleans does, they don't have much cap to do anything. And he's going to come back next year. He could be somebody you could look at to trade low and be a poor man's Jameson Williams. But yeah, for me, JMO, he's shown me enough where it's like, okay, he gets 4 to 5 targets a week. Sometimes he gets 8 or 9. And those are usually the 5 for 100 and 2 or 1. And yeah, like you said, like he is definitely one of those. He's the perfect wide receiver 3, because wide receiver 3, the best thing you can ask for is there's a chance he goes off and he can win you a week. And that's what Jameson Williams is. And that's why I was really trading for him, because I saw like great offense. Quarterback still trusts him after everything that's happened. He's not going to get suspended. Everything that he's gone through, he's dodged every single damn bullet he could.
Yeah.
And it looks like Antoine Randall is the receiver coach, and he is invested in Jameson Williams. Like you see him on the sideline when JMO gets in trouble, and he's like a dad. He's like, gives him an eye roll, points, be like, no, you can't do that. Like you look at the sideline, like they want this kid to be great. And I think he's in the right situation for it. If he was anywhere else, maybe he'd get into more trouble, be out of the league. But I like his situation. I like where he's at in this offense. So yeah, I think he's a good buy. For the last episode, give me 3 players that you are excited to go out and buy before you think they're going to hit.
Whew.
I know I put you on the spot a little bit.
No, that's okay. I want to go out and buy. I would say one of them is Josh Downs.
Okay.
I like, even with Richardson at quarterback, like
he's so bad.
He's so bad. But even with Richardson at quarterback, I think Downs is, again, that kind of guy that can get you 6 for 80 and then have some of those ceiling games. And if he's a wide receiver 3 like Jameson Williams, I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah.
Because he's the type of player that is, I think, the best kind of player for Richardson, a kid that can break open short and then make big plays. And I think that's what Josh Downs can do. So I think his price, and he's flashed this year, I think his price is fairly affordable.
Like a second.
Yeah.
So with Richardson, I know you listen to Locked On. They mentioned that he is quarterback 7 in DLF Dynasty rankings.
That's absurd, because he was just like quarterback 18 like a month ago.
So, and my favorite quote was Marcus Grant saying, every time he completes a pass, everybody freaks out and thinks he's the next coming of anything. But he's got a 47% completion percentage, and everybody goes, "Oh, Josh Allen, he had a bad." He was at 53, and we were like, "This guy's terrible." He is sub 500, Anthony Richardson, that is, and
so bad.
We are still like, he could be like, he has half a year next year, and if he doesn't change, he will probably get replaced. Like, that's where we're at with Richardson. And I don't think he's got as long as the leash as people are giving him, thinking he's going to have.
Other players I would go and buy. You know what I've really liked? I know he's been out the last few weeks with a concussion, but before that, I've really liked what I've seen out of Cedric Tillman. He had a couple of monster games. I think he's the perfect, if they stick with Judy, Tillman, Elijah Moore, and Njoku next year. Obviously, they'll probably do something at the running back position. I don't think Nick Chubb is back next year. And they have Donta Foreman, Pierre Strong. Jerome Ford will still be there because he's under his rookie deal. but I think they probably draft a running back. That would be the kind where like the kid from Iowa, Caleb Johnson goes.
Caleb Johnson,
or, I mean, they're bad. I don't think they'll get in the Genty sweepstakes, but who knows, right? So we don't know what the quarterback situation looks like there, and that's the scariest part. So I think you could probably acquire Tillman pretty cheaply for like, what, a third-round pick maybe? Because people are going to be like, oh, he was concussed, he was out for a few weeks, and kind of forget that like he looked awesome like 3 weeks before that. He had some big ceiling games. He looked really, really good. So that's a guy that I would try and go and get because I like his upside. I liked his profile coming out of Tennessee. I liked him way more than Jalen Hyatt, and Jalen Hyatt won the friggin' Biletnikoff. So yeah, down year for the Biletnikoff apparently.
Yeah.
Other players I want to go and get. What are a couple that you got before I give you my third?
So Daniel Jones, because I do think he lands a starting gig next year. Just because it's not because people believe in him. I think him going to Minnesota and just kind of slowing things down and probably learning off the field from, KOC helps him a little bit. But this quarterback class is not great. I think there's more quarterback needy teams than there is quarterbacks in this class. Like I do think Kirk Cousins gets another job. I think Aaron Rodgers gets another job. I think Justin Fields could get a job just because like there's nothing. And like Garner Minshew could have a job. And I think Daniel Jones is another one of those options, a cheap option for like a bridge or anything. And I think right now is a good time to get him for dirt cheap in Superflex leagues because he is a guy that is a first round pick. He's shown some talent. It's just that inept Giants offense, sucked the life out of him. And yeah, I get he was not good for them. And there was moments where like this guy sucks, but I do think there's something with him going to Minnesota and slowing it down, not feeling pressure. So I like Daniel Jones. Another person I really like is Christian Watson, who I was never big on, but his price is so nice and he's getting so many targets. The playing time is there.
Yeah.
And I love Jaden Reed and I hope they use him better next year. But Christian Watson, he's getting a lot of pass interference calls. If you watch anything, he is very good at LeBroning when he's getting thrown the ball.
Sure.
And he has stayed relatively healthy this season, which is good to see. Mm-hmm. And I think the next step is him becoming a little more involved in the offense. Like the snaps are there. And I could see him as one of those wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 3s that we talked about. Like he could have the 3 for 40, but then he can also have a week where it's like 4 for 120 and a touchdown or 2 and win you the week. Like that, he's a perfect wide receiver 3.
He had that stretch in his rookie season where he was absolutely on fire, right?
Just touchdowns, yeah.
And and ultimately you want players to score touchdowns because that leads to victories.
And Jalen McMillan buy high because I think he's taking, like, people think Godwin's resigning. I don't think that's happening because they need to involve money elsewhere.
Patriots have a ton of money. If they wanted to throw it at Godwin, they could. Like,
yeah.
I don't think Godwin's a difference maker like T. Higgins, but like, yeah, they could, if they wanted to. They don't get T. Higgins. They could throw $20-25 million at Godwin for a couple of years.
Yeah. And so I think McMillan takes over the Godwin role, which he is right now. Baker's trusting him more, which is like, look what he could be. And this is with Mike Evans balling out. So, and Bucky and Rachaad White, like there's enough to go around in this passing offense as long as Liam Cohen can stay the OC.
The forgotten man now that Mike Evans is back. Boo.
I mean, we saw that coming, right?
We did, yeah. I'll give you my last one, and it is a bit of it could be a buy high now if you still have trading open. Wouldn't do this move now, but do this move in the offseason. If this happens, if Ken Walker comes back and he is healthy for the rest of the season, and Zach Charbonnet continues to take the backseat role and they don't use him and Ken Walker gets 20 touches a game, you want to buy Zach Charbonnet in the offseason. Because to me, Zach Charbonnet is a better complete running back than Ken Walker.
Yeah.
The thing about Ken Walker that everyone loves is the 60, 70-yard runs, but they forget about the 1 and 2 yard runs. And he's not super active in the passing game. He's started to be more active in the passing game this year, but Charbonnet is a much, much better pass catcher than Ken Walker is. And anytime that Zach Charbonnet has needed to step in when Ken Walker is down, Charbonnet's produced. So for me, I want to go after Charbonnet, and, I wouldn't even label as a high-end handcuff, but, Ken Walker's going on what year?
I think he'll be year 4 next year.
So he's coming up. He was a second-round pick, so he's going to be coming up on the end of his deal. So you're going to have that layer. I don't think that the Seahawks would pay him knowing they have Charbonnet there.
I mean, the Ravens never really paid running backs, so unless Derrick Henry comes available, but yeah, the Ravens were never a pay your running back type of team. They always drafted second, third rounders, and kind of went from there. So maybe they bring that philosophy.
If I had to give up a second for Charbonnet, I think I would gladly do that.
Like you said, wait though, because this is
wait. Do it in the offseason. If Walker comes back and he looks good, target Charbonnet in the offseason all day long.
And heads up, this is a weak class. Like I was going through it, and I'm like, your late first aren't going to be late first like this year. It's going to be you're going to be picking between like a 3rd round, 4th round running back,
a couple of tight ends in the 1st round this year.
Yeah, but I mean, they're tight ends. They could, So. Yeah, for me, I think this year I'm looking more at take my first, draft a known commodity, especially during the draft, because it's going to be tough sailing, especially in single quarterback leagues where, I know it's only 2 spots, but yeah, it's going to be weak.
I agree with that. But Charbonnet is definitely a guy that I want to try and go and acquire if I can.
Yeah, and like you said with Ken Walker, like he's a 1-1-2-60 type guy. Like he's a poor man's new age Adrian Peterson, if you remember that.
Yeah, and he gets hurt like Thomas Rawls. Like he just runs hard, he runs fast, and he hits something and then he's injured. Like that's what Thomas Rawls was fun for the Seahawks until he runs so aggressive that you just can't sustain that unless you're built like a Greek god like Adrian Peterson or Derrick Henry.
See Isaiah Pacheco, who he's at that point in his career where it's like, are we going to trust him?
Yeah, it's a great question. I could see Kansas City drafting a running back in the first few rounds.
Yeah, they let go of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What the hell?
Oh, no. Should have drafted Jonathan Taylor. Whoopsie.
Yeah, so they can fumble the ball at the one.
Luckily, the teams I had Taylor on were all on bye this week, so that was nice. I didn't get affected by that.
Yeah.
RIP to everyone else who lost on that play. Swing of 8 points. All right, I think that's all we got, Tyler. I'll let you do the outro as it is your last one. So I'm glad we were able to wrap up this podcast with without technical difficulties. So that's nice. But yeah, send us out of here for the last time.
All right. Well, for all those listening on audio, which you all are, I'm probably going to have to do some major editing on this one because my computer did not want this to be the last episode. I'm actually doing this on my phone for the first time. It's been interesting. My eardrums are definitely popped because I can't control the volume of my headphones in my mic. It's funny, but I want to say la vie, and thanks for listening. This is the last episode. Who knows if it's the last episode for forever? We will see how the years go and how the time happens to come about. But thank you all for listening. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate you. You are
my pleasure.
An amazing friend. First, one of the best hosts I ever listened to. You are awesome at doing this. You're great at fantasy. I hate playing against you. I'm probably going to end up playing against you in some finals. I enjoy co-owning with Trade Addict 7, which we just randomly win, and it's fun. And I'll always enjoy playing video games with you, which is one of my favorite things to do. It's my release. It's my getting away from real life type thing. And yeah, whatever you do, you're going to be great at. Hopefully you carry on Dynasty Happy Hour. If not, that's fine. If you don't, I'm sure somebody would be happy to have you. So if you're listening and you have a podcast, we have a free agent starting today, and his name is Doug Eddy.
Those bids in.
He's the DeAndre Hopkins at 30 years old. We're not going to give you a 33-year-old Hopkins. We'll give you a 30-year-old Hopkins.
Yeah, that's fair. He was
still in this prime. And yeah, thank you all for listening. This is Tyler. Last time on the Dynasty Happy Hour. Thanks for listening, and I won't see you next week.